Good.
I'll call this meeting of the Executive Committee to order. We are all present. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
I
allegiance
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to
and to
the
the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible,
with liberty
and justice for all.
All right, we have a number of discussion items.
Ask David to post it.
Oh, this meeting was posted in accordance with the applicable rules by the clerk's office, correct? Okay. Duties of the county attorney.
Make it quick. I think everybody knows kind of what we do, but I'll give you a nice summary. We are the attorney for the county in civil matters, including legal counsel for the county executive, the county board, and its committees and all county departments. We interpret the duties and powers of the county board, county officials, and departments. We are the legal advisor to the county highway department. We advise and assist the county treasurer in foreclosure of tax liens. We are the legal advisor in matters involving workmen's compensation and unemployment compensation. We are the legal advisor to county land use and the planning committee, including enforcement of zoning and sanitary ordinances. We supervise and provide legal services to child support agency, certain juvenile prosecutions, namely termination of parental rights, and now the child in need of protection and services matters. We are legal counsel to Washington County Human Services Department. We do guardianships and Chapter 51 mental commitments for them. We're legal counsel for the Veterans Service Office, the Washington Ozaukee Public Health Department, and we generally assist and represent the interest of Washington County in any and all legal matters. Questions?
You want to roll right into child support?
Right into child support.
Okay, thank you.
So under the direction of the county attorney, the child support agency obtains, monitors, and enforces child support orders in cases where parents are separated, divorced, unmarried, or when children are placed in foster care. When a child is receiving public aid and benefits, the case is automatically referred to the child support agency by the Human Services Department. When there is no aid being received in a case, the child support agency will provide assistance to parents, but at that point they have to apply for it. We don't just automatically assume they want us to enforce their case. The agency can obtain an order for child support and or medical support or enforce an existing order. When a child is born to parents who are not married and they don't file a paternity acknowledgement at the birth, the agency will commence an action to establish paternity, and at that time establish child support orders if they're wanted or if they're necessary under the law, repayment of birth expenses if the county or the state paid for some of that, and any other expenses that may be ordered. The child support agency reviews support orders for modifications, and they pursue collection of child support arrearages through actions which include court orders, income withholding, liens, money judgments, and tax intercepts, and lottery winnings. That's about it.
Questions? From you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next discussion item is duties and responsibilities of the Human Resources Department.
So I'll try to make it pretty brief. First, we do more than just issue violations and terminate people. So that's what most people think about here HR. Realistically, at a really high level, I kind of broke things out to recruitment, selection, and retention. Underneath that, things like identifying and being able to go out and find candidates, putting in place selection procedures to make sure that we've protected ourselves, picking those people, developing employee programs. Some of those things could be things as simple as our appreciation party, our spot bonus program, things like that, to make sure we can administer those for people. Doing employee development, including leadership development. So we have a SABA program that is tied with our comp plan. where people can get more education, administer staffing needs, reviews. So basically when somebody requests staff, kind of taking a look at that as to where we are. We work with a couple of other departments in order to do that assessment. Performance management, again, that's also through part of a system we use, but making sure that people have a chance to do performance reviews, that they're done well, so on. Under compensation and benefits, we do wage and salary administration. So our BPA group really does the analytics with the compensation and so on. Our group then looks at that and says, are we being consistent in applying it and so on? And are we creating discrepancies? Workers' comp, life insurance, employee benefits and benefits administration. So like health insurance, short and long-term disability, dental, vision, et cetera. Safety wellness programs, including our on-site clinic, labor relations, and also from a compliance side, things like records management. We're certainly required to maintain employee records and keeping those in clean order. Grievance adjudication, administering affirmative action, FMLA, ADA, so all those compliance things. Developing policies, implementing policies, doing legal compliance, unemployment. Then we have an HRIS, Human Resource Information System, making sure that that's there, all the information there is accurate and so on, so people get paid well, have benefits. That's a quick summary. So any questions? I hope that answer them.
Just one quick question. Do you see any issues retaining employees?
Sure.
Okay, in all departments or?
I think that sure, and I say that from the standpoint of it's an issue everywhere. Right? I mean, like every other employer, our workforce is also older, so people are retiring, so we're going out to find people.
Sure.
And I think at the end of the day, people who start a new job, most people don't choose to take a job when they're earlier in their career and spend their life there, which isn't the same as some of the employees who've been here for a long, long time. So
Sure.
Do I think that's an issue? Sure. How big of an issue? Time's going to tell.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next up, IT department.
IT is one of the customer service support groups that is part of administration. But IT is really split up into two different groups. We have techs and then we also have developers. So we actually have developers on staff that create software for Washington County. The techs basically maintain the existing infrastructure that we have throughout, and they also implement new infrastructure as we go forward to kind of drive and move the departments forward. The techs really facilitate process changes within the departments and also work on more or less increasing the productivity within those areas as well. Overall, we support servers, firewalls, routers, switches, desk phones, cell phones, laptops, PCs, and numerous software packages amongst the 20 different departments that are out there. So we do that with about 10 positions total. And again, they're split up between the techs and the product development or the developers. So any questions? Great, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
As technology keeps going, do you anticipate you're going to need more people at some point, or?
I think we'll probably need more people at some point if we start seeing sharing of IT services with other areas, hopefully. That's what we're kind of focused on from time to time. We'll sit down and talk with, whether it's like Hartford or, different municipalities that we can see whether there's any services that we can share between those two. And then I can kind of see IT expanding as we do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Duties and responsibilities of finance.
Good afternoon. So finance is another one of those service departments within admin. Our main customer is the other departments. So our main day-to-day duties basically include maintaining the financial system and everything that kind of goes along with that, including security rights for access, troubleshooting for employees. We do our own data entry in there for transactions, journal entries, invoices, that kind of tasks. We are also the main area for grant administration within the county. So we have a position that manages and monitors all the grants that the county has throughout all of the departments to ensure that we remain in compliance with grant agreements and federal and state requirements for grants. And then also helps coordinate all the paperwork and documentation that's necessary for the annual audit of those grants. Speaking of audit, we also coordinate the annual financial audit within our office, including complete preparation of the annual financial statements. That's done completely in-house by our staff. A lot of government entities tend to have that kind of contracted out because they just don't have the skill set available to do that. We've got 2 former auditors in our department. So I'm one of them and my controller is the second. So we've definitely got a good skill set as to what the auditors need and the reports that need to be prepared. Part of that also includes implementing any new accounting standards that come out for governments. We've got our own set of rules that we need to follow, so it's different than business accounting. Most businesses account for usually on like a cash plate basis. For us, the county, we have to do cash and full accrual. We're required to report 2 different methods. So we maintain all the documentation to do that. That's kind of the highlights of everything we do. There's a lot of day-to-day individual pieces that we help with troubleshooting and other types of questions, but that's our main focus.
At what part of the year do you usually do the audit?
So we normally start working on that. Some things start right away in December before the end of the year even comes because we're getting departments ready for how to kind of split things between the 2 years. But then finance usually will straddle those 2 years from usually about December and into June. We're just finishing up the audit with the auditors this week, issuing final reports. So.
Okay.
Speaking of shared services, since you have the skills of yourself and your controller, have other municipalities approached us as far as being able to outsource that to their?
Nothing formal, but I've had like phone calls a lot with Village of Jackson and worked with them on some of their financial questions, most recently in relation to ARPA and some of the requirements there. So we do kind of act as a resource to some of those localities. Carrie at the City of West Bend, we kind of worked with her a few times on some questions too. So we don't rule it out. It's just, I think a lot of them, once they kind of know who we are, they'll sometimes reach out with questions, but I think a lot of them rely on their auditors.
Thank you.
Question.
Carol?
Yes, with the change to the biennial budget. Budgeting is a hard process for any organization that goes through it. And I'm sure that every year under the old system, you just allocated, starting on this date, and ending on this date, all hands on deck, we're going to work on budget. Now that we've gone to the biennial, are you looking at, okay, this year we don't have to spend so much time on it because we're on a 2-year cycle, but going into the start of that second cycle, are we looking at twice as much time as we used to, or are we going to really see some compression and some savings, time economies from your standpoint with the workload? I mean, you don't have to do it every year, but you're doing twice as much for one period. I mean, just your opinions on how that can be, how the efficiencies are going to work there.
So budget moved into our budget policy and analytics department, which is under Aaron. But even before it moved over into the area, we were talking about biannual budget, and we kind of, at the time we assumed, and I think that's what's playing out, from the department side, their time in preparation in that off year is kind of eliminated or greatly reduced. But on our side, there's still a lot of work and analysis to be done to make sure that the assumptions made in year 1 still apply to year 2. That there's things change constantly, and especially in the current economic environment, they're changing even more than we would normally see. So I think on our end, it may be a reduced workload. Aaron's shaking his head yes, but there is still a certain level of workload, and most of that now is done by the BPA area, but finance does work closely with them, and there's a lot of back and forth between our 2 areas.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Our next discussion item is the compensation plan review.
Thank you. So this is really a discussion item. Just wanted to make you aware that, and it's all in the committee report for the most part. Our planning team is going to be going out, based on the direction from our county executive, to go out as we committed to 3 years ago. We put a comp plan in place and said, every 3 years, we're gonna go out, we're gonna gather data on what our comparable counties are doing and make sure that we weight that relative to where we're at. This committee report is really saying that is our intent, is to start gathering that data again. And so at the point that we would move forward with anything, that would again come back to this committee and then ultimately the county board. But I guess that's really what this was for. So if people have questions, I try to answer them.
The only question I'm sorry. The only question I might have is, what is your anticipation?
I don't know that I can even answer that question and be wise about it. I'm not sure that I can answer it. I think it's going to really come down to what are other counties doing and what are we hearing? Again, I would just be guessing. It's a small guess.
Well, the only reason I'm asking is I know what's happening in the private sector.
I know.
It's kind of getting ugly, you know?
I know.
So.
I know.
Okay.
So the timing of this is probably the right timing.
You bet.
What is happening in the private sector?
Wages are going up.
What is that?
Products are going up. In what terms? You mean percentage wise or?
Just,
Well, I'm saying 3 to 4%, if not more, depending on how desperate some of the companies are to fill roles. You know, I think the lower end is actually getting a bigger kick because of restaurant people, you know, the welders, people like that are getting $3 or $4 raises. And when you add that to $25, that's a big uptick. So
I think you
again, it depends on.
answered your question.
Well, sure. I'm assuming.
That's what I mean.
I'm assuming that's what we're gonna see too.
I'm assuming the same.
So,
Yeah, like I said, I don't want to guess, but I'm guessing that's very possible.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Our next item is 4G, ARPA fund utilization for family swimming and recreation support.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and committee. I've tried to lay out as best I can in your committee report with some of the materials that are supporting the gist of how kind of we got to where we're at. Long and short of it is, a few weeks back, I talked to the chairman, I talked to chief elected officials in Hartford, West Bend, and Kewaskum about a number of the problems that all three communities are having in hiring lifeguards specifically, or at least that's what was cited in many of their public conversations about their swimming facilities. I don't know how much you know about swimming facilities, but in the county, they're really the only three left that have lifeguards, active lifeguards in attendance that are outdoor facilities. We do have other outdoor swimming facilities. Obviously, the county has a handful, Sandy Knoll, Yar Park, Eckerman's Grove, and then the state has Pike Lake. So there are other options, but they are not lifeguarded, at least not the same way that these three facilities are. So as this process went sequentially, I found out about Hartford's potential closure of some of their amenities, which was reported in a number of local news organizations. Then I started to do research on Kewaskum, which I had found out actually announced closure of their facility a couple of months ago already. And then West Bend, right when I was looking into this, they were contemplating whether or not they were going to fill in Rainier Park Pond. And ultimately, they've since decided not to do that, but to close for the balance of the year. So when I had the discussion with the chairman and I had the phone calls with the chief elected officials, what I said to them was, I'm not interested in all of the decision-making processes. I'm not interested in telling you how to run your operation. All I'm interested in is these are the only three facilities in the county that are lifeguarded. With the price of gas and inflation that some of which we just talked about, there's families in this county who this is probably going to be their only option to do these types of things over the course of the summer. It's exactly what ARPA is designed for. I think we need to do something, and the county is standing here ready to help you in any way we can. pretty quickly, the city of Hartford asked for help and called us to talk through what exactly they thought they needed. Shortly after that, West Bend and Kewaskum had follow-up conversations. You can see what was spelled out with the city of Hartford specifically on what they think they need in order to be able to mitigate the potential of them shutting down any of their operations. They spelled it out in pretty good detail in that email. I will say that's an email, meaning it's a draft, and this continues to evolve and change. The conversations with the city of West Bend, it became apparent relatively quickly that there was just too much lift for them to do to be able to even open Regner this year. Kewaskum was very much the same since they had made their decision a couple of months earlier already. And so they decided to stick with those decisions. For the most part, didn't even go public with the offer that I had made on behalf of the county. What we've worked out since with the city of Hartford is very much in line with what you saw. The one exception is the city was very adamant that we not bus people to their facility. They expect significant attendance at the Veterans Memorial Aquatic Center. Since there are no other facilities within about a 30-mile radius that'll be open. There's very much this challenge across probably the bulk of the state, but certainly southeast Wisconsin. The second component of what I'm proposing and considering is kind of moving to making more options available, kind of maximizing the options. And let me just put it in this context. On a day like today has been for at least the next few hours, Regner Park is probably potentially, according to our conversations, has 1,000+ people at that facility, all enjoying the water to cool down. Kewaskum has hundreds of people, and the Hartford facility can have up to, I believe, 1,200 people. I might be off by a little bit on all those numbers, but we're talking thousands of people on days like today. Instead, two of those facilities, which constitute at least half of the facility, the number of people, are completely closed and folks have nowhere to go. To make things more complicated, the largest city in our county, where a number of the attendees are coming on bikes and walking in and probably don't have or haven't historically had the means to be able to get in a car and travel, certainly aren't able to do that far across the county. And so we're proposing a couple of additional options. One, we're proposing to, as you read in the email, we're proposing to pay 50% of the cost for all Washington County residents to go to the Hartford facility as if it's a Washington County facility. So as if they're a resident of the city of Hartford, we'll pay the difference in the cost. We're also going to basically do the same thing with our county parks that have swimming facilities, Ackerman's Grove, Sandy Knoll, and Yar Park. And we're also going to do the same thing with the YMCA. I believe you have a handout in front of you, if I'm not mistaken, is that true? With a proposal that the Y has put together. Basically what this is going to do is give extended hours at the Y, give a similar type of a 50% discount for admission for non-Y members. And again, it'll be open to all residents of Washington County for the balance of the rest of the summer. Obviously, it's already June 15th, or June 14th, 15th, is it 15th? So we've already lost half of the month of June. We only probably have, really practically speaking, about 10 more weeks, 11 more weeks, where this is going to be something that is available and kids and families can actually utilize. So from some of the original estimates, the numbers are certainly going to fluctuate. We don't exactly know what that'll look like, but suffice it to say, we want to make sure that kids and families in Washington County have access to these amenities, which otherwise they wouldn't. I anticipate we're going to see an uptick at our county parks. I will, however, caution you by saying those facilities don't have lifeguards. So I it might not be as much as you would think. If there's 1,200 people a day that could have been at Regner and Kewaskum combined, I don't expect all 1,200 are going to show up at Ackerman's, Sandy Knoll, and Ackerman's and Yar Park. But that being said, we want the option for them to be there. The final component that we have proposed and offered, I have talked with the chief elected officials in Kewaskum and West Bend, as well as the administrators. And we have worked with Scott Schmidt and the local bus companies, Go Right Way and Johnson Bus, to try to develop a transit type route. My initial hope was we could use transit money from President Biden to be able to fund it. Short answer is it's too complicated. The red tape that would be involved is not worth the effort. But we have developed a route from Kewaskum to Yar and Sandy Knoll, and from West Bend to Yar and Sandy Knoll. Basically, what I asked Scott to do and what he has done is put together a turnkey operation that we can hand over to the rec departments in Kewaskum and West Bend. They would run it, and then it would be a reimbursement from the county, 75% of the cost. They'd have to have skin in the game. They'd be paying 25% of those costs. But it would give any family that doesn't have the option of jumping in a car and buying a park pass and going through all that stuff. It would take one less hurdle out of the way from those families. As I said at the very beginning, and I'll say it again because I think it's worth repeating, I told the chief elected officials, as you can imagine, some of the staff in particular at municipalities was a little concerned about the county getting into some of their business. But the bottom line is people, families, and children in Washington County, this is an important amenity. If you've ever been to Regner Park, if you've never been to Regner Park, it's a sight to see on a day like today. And it's just not going to be an option for those kids. And that's literally thousands of kids and probably hundreds of families that aren't able to enjoy the quality of life that we work so hard to create. So we certainly want to create another opportunity for them to do that. As you can see in the committee report, the initial estimate for year one is about $350,000 of ARPA money. That will evolve over time. Well, certainly you can see in the city of Hartford's proposal that this is something that they would do and wean themselves off over time. If you read the front page of the paper, they talked about that at detail, it looks like, to their city council. And in my conversations with them, I told them, I realize you can't jump from $13 to $16 overnight and be able to cover those costs. So we are working with them on a plan to wean them off, whether it's tax levy or their fees, which was discussed in the paper. That's their business. I'm not interested in having that conversation. I anticipate we'll have similar conversations with Kewaskum and West Bend in the coming months. I've offered and asked that a committee be put together across the county to talk about how do we make sure this doesn't happen again. We have a wonderful resource at the YMCA with Rob Johnson, who is the CEO, and one of his staff members who is another person who's aquatic expert. So hoping to get them in as part of the discussion for how to avoid things like this happening in the future. Just to give you one closing comment, because one of the things that came up internally as we were talking about this was, why is this a problem for the city and the village, and it's not a problem for the county, who also has a pond and also has an outdoor swimming lake? Basically, the difference, particularly with Regner, is from the city's perspective and their attorney's perspective and their insurance company's perspective, it's a dark water man-made pond, which creates additional concern and liability. Whether or not there's legal opinions that disagree with that, or personal opinions or political opinions, it doesn't matter. Their attorney and their insurance company is saying it's a different thing. For us, there's a thing called recreational immunity, which both we and the city have. Our insurance companies don't have those same concerns. Ours, Sandy Knoll, technically is not a pond. Technically, it's fed by a stream. And of course, the two lakes are not man-made either. They're natural. Yar Park in specific is spring-fed. So that's the reason they're handled a little bit differently. I will end by simply saying that I think this is a really important thing for the county to do. It's going to be the premier story on the county's newsletter. Our plan is to literally attach coupons to the newsletter that people can use to go to utilize these facilities to receive that 50% discounted rate. I fully anticipate, just like the Green Sheet and the Journal Sentinel, they're going to be tearing them out and sharing them with their family and friends, and we want them to do that. From an operational perspective, we have them fill it out and send it in, so there's some proof. Or for the case of our parks, as Chairman Marion would know, and if any of you have been to the park, they'll have to fill out everything online through our app. But at the end, this is an opportunity for the county to save summer in Washington County for families and kids that otherwise may not have anything. So with that, I know you have questions and concerns, and I'm happy to entertain those and try to answer them as best I can.
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I just have to say, Mr. Executive, that thank you for, in such a dynamic situation where a sense of urgency is critical, that you acted. I think it's imperative that we do something, as you said, and I think your approach and conversations and collaborations with the municipalities is great. So thank you for that. I have a question that goes a little bit into some of the operational stuff as far as salary, because obviously that's going to be a draw or not for the lifeguards. The question is revolving around, and it may have changed since I'm looking at the email draft, is the $14 an hour and getting up to that. If West Bend's current was at 15 and they had few to no respondents, are we in the right ballpark?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it was one of the concerns from all of the municipalities. So I had this conversation with the Y, some super insider baseball, but the Y, the school district, and the city always work together to coordinate what the salary or the wage is going to be for lifeguards every year, because they're all hiring the same positions, competing for the same people. The Y pays $15 an hour, the city did. Basically, Rob's opinion in my conversation with him was really this boils down to a recruiting process and the level of expertise. Hartford in particular has 2 aquatic facilities. They have the Signacast facility, which is indoor, but at their rec center over by Shower Arts and Activity Center, if you're familiar with that. And then they also have the Veterans Memorial. So they're dealing with this all year round. Obviously, this is what the Y does, big part of what they do for a living. The city and the village, not as much. And I think that's part of what got them into this. But there also is the additional concern, and Supervisor Shodman was talking about this, just getting into it just a minute ago. You can go work at Walmart, Aldi, Quick Trip, you name the place for $15 an hour right now. So it is part of the equation. The way that Hartford has cracked the nut is something that Rob Johnson advocated in the legislature for in the last couple of years, and that was to lower the age allowable for lifeguards to 15 years old. So they have a lot of, and I think this was in the paper this morning, they have a lot of teenagers, high schoolers in particular, young college students who are working for them. As you can read in the email, they had most of their staff staffed, but because they're high school kids, they have athletic camps and family vacations and everything that kids have during the 12 weeks of summer, which seems to be down to 10 or 9 or 8. So that is a concern. It's also part of why I think there needs to be a county-wide discussion about how are we going to handle this in the future. Because from out of the gate, the reason that Rob Johnson reached out to me was when I reached out to the cities and the villages, the rumor was the county was going to pay $25 an hour to lifeguards to make sure that his license stayed open. And I assured him that was not going to happen. And if it did happen, we'll help the Y too. But you're right on the head of what some of the concerns and issues are. Hartford's got it handled for now. The Y has it handled for now. They're both continuing to recruit, but it is a longer term issue for all of them.
Thank you. To just build on that a bit, I like the idea of the bonuses, them staying longer, working more hours. That's very creative as well. how about on the flip side, if it gets to a push and shove, how about like a sign-on bonus? Has that been considered?
So both were talked about early on, in particular in the city of West Bend. One thing to remember about Regner is they're about to do a grand opening for their bathhouse, which, is a iconic building in the city of West Bend, built back during the Great Depression. So there's a lot of big donors who are very interested and had opinions very much like the one you're sharing. So both ideas were discussed. Another idea that was discussed was, in addition to the bonus at the end of the year, do we tie some kind of scholarship to it to try and attract more high school kids and college kids? So there's so much ideation happening that this was, as you kind of started off with, this was as much of we've got an urgent issue, let's try to tackle it quickly. And then as we move along, we'll bring in more ideas and hopefully have more players at the table. I really think we will.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, the county's role in this basically is to underwrite some funding. We're not involved with their practices, what rate they finally determine to do their bonuses. Those are their decisions to make. We're just standing by and say, hey, if you need some monies, we have some for you.
Simply stated, yes. And that is exactly the message that I took when I went to meet with the city of Hartford and with the city of West Bend was, I know nothing about swimming pools. I know nothing about lifeguards. Jamie Ludovic knows a ton about it, but I know nothing. So we're just here to help make sure these facilities are open. And if they can't be open, that people have options. That's it. So that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yep. So I like a lot of what we're doing here. The question I have though is, with Hartford, they got their own ARPA money. Why are we using our ARPA money to fund their lifeguards rather than having them use their ARPA money to fund that? And I didn't see that anywhere in the packet addressed.
Yeah, it's not in there. It's not addressed because it wasn't discussed. I didn't go there asking them to solve their own problem. I went there offering solutions to make sure that this wasn't the problem. It certainly could have been. It was also, by the way, not something that the city of West Bend even considered from what they told me. For all I know, all three municipalities, that was their first option. They chose not to do it. I'm not sure. My best guess for you is similar to what every other municipality in Wisconsin is doing, and that is they're putting it towards water and sewer projects because it's the easy way to spend it on things that are highly needed in almost every community. So is it possible? Yes. The only other thing that I would add is this is their money as much as it is our money. I mean, the taxpayers we're talking about are our taxpayers. So as I said, probably 4 times now, I never looked at this from a how much money is this going to cost perspective. This was people are going to be in a real problem this summer. Inflation is at 8.6%. Gas prices are going to be up to $6 before we blink our eyes. If we dink around with pointing fingers and who's who, and we're never going to solve it. So let's just figure out solutions. And I know that's not a perfect answer, but it's not a perfect situation.
I encourage you to keep this process moving at whatever speed is necessary. I think it's a great idea. I'm glad the county's in a position where we've got the wherewithal, we've got some ideas, some creative ideas on how to make this work. And in that regard, I think let's just keep going. Don't stop.
And for all your information, I've been asking, okay, how much ARPA money do we have? Are we spending it all? And we agreed today that RG Hamers will be providing us with information in future board meetings. We've spent some money, we'll see where we are in what's available and what we've spent.
And I would encourage you guys, any questions you have about this one in particular, because as I wrote in the committee report, I never come to you with an idea that isn't fully vetted out, but unfortunately, there's just not time to do that. And obviously, since I gave you the packet, it's changed 5 times. So I want you to feel free to ask as many questions as you want. The one thing that I do want to touch on is as you think about this more, if it hasn't dawned on you already, it will. The transit piece in particular, but really the bulk of what we're doing is Highway 60 North. And we had long discussions about how do we address the whole entire county. And when it came down to it, for many of the same reasons we're talking about now, I decided to say, let's address what's urgently happening today. And as these conversations happen over the course of the summer and into the fall, we can, if this is a bigger county issue, we can address that next year. But very much like we're doing with so many other things, let's treat it like a pilot, because it is. I mean, this is a prototype. We don't even know what's going to happen a week from now. And if it works, great. And we can address more. The other beautiful thing is, hopefully it drives more people to our parks, and that's more people we can advertise to buy park stickers in the future and, utilize all the amenities that the county has moving forward. And I don't have to tell you guys, our relationships with the municipalities aren't always the best, and this has all been positive, very, very positive. So it's just going to keep, I imagine it's going to keep changing, and that we're going to have more reports coming to you with, okay, now this piece is happening, and now this piece is happening.
Any other issue?
Yeah, the only quick comment I have is, shucks, you answered all my questions, so I have nothing more to add. Other than, I know we keep using ARPA funds for this, there's other things coming down the line with ARPA funds. Do we have any concern with, fuel's going up? Are we gonna run out like some counties of money for fuel for sheriffs and everything else? And
So generically speaking, let me just say, and I don't want to go too much off track here, but let me just generically say two things. One, you have a general fund transfer on your agenda in just a moment. We'll get into that, but the long and short of it is, with that, we're probably roughly halfway through the totality of our ARPA money, meaning we still got another $3.2 million. As I've told you all from the beginning.
13.2.
Thank you, 13.2, thank you.
how was that question?
Sorry, 13.2.
Sure.
Halfway, 13.2. As I've told you all in the past, the Next Generation Housing Project is our number one project priority. So we got to let that play out a little bit. There are other community conversations that are happening. I get asked, if it's not daily, it's multiple times a week, about different programs and projects and ideas for ARPA. But that's ARPA itself. What you need to understand with the rest of the county's finances is we are from a savings account perspective, we're in the best position we've been in as long as I've been here and longer. And I say that because it means we're good, just like you were good if your savings account was full at home and your salary has stayed roughly the same for many years. If something bad happens, we can absorb something bad. If we're in the middle of a recession right now and we're just starting to realize it, we can adapt to that. We've probably got 3 to 5 years where we can live without panicking. Where we're a little uncomfortable is the ongoing operating costs. Basically, like literally like at home, our salary has basically been like this, our take home, and our expenses have continued to rise. And we've just been constantly adapting. With the discussion you just heard about compensation plan and the conclusions you come to on your own, I'm nervous, but not anxious. I'm confident in the next few years, but we've got to mind the house. That's really all. So
Perfect.
I think as long as we keep our fingers on the pulse of, where we're at, and we continue to be fiscally conservative, if we really are walking into a recession, other counties, other municipalities are going to start to freak out, and we're going to go to our savings account and we're going to adjust, and compensation plans are going to increase a lot, and we'll just keep running and going.
Take the hits as they come.
We can, yeah.
Right.
We're in that kind of a position, and a lot of places are not in that position.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Josh, did you want a general consensus from them on that?
Sure. All right.
For doing the thumbs up. It's on camera.
Yeah.
Next item is item 5A, transfer from the general fund for next generation housing development, to replace allocated ARPA funding. Deb?
Good afternoon. So to reduce the substantial burden of the reporting for ARPA funds, the 7.5 million portion of the Next Generation Housing Fund, which is funded by ARPA, would be used for public safety. And then the general fund transfer for 7.5 would replace that. And that's what would be used for the Next Generation Housing. There are a lot of reporting requirements, and it would not only be just for the county, but also for all of our coalition partners as we're trying to work together. So it does make sense that that portion of the Next Generation Housing Fund is not ARPA.
Can I stand shoulder to shoulder with you and
Absolutely.
talk about it? Is that right, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So succinctly said, this is us using the savings account, which has no federal strings attached, rather than us going to ARPA. And what we're doing over the long haul is the procedure that Aaron and Margie helped develop for how we accept. We followed your grant policy, we accepted the grant, we adopted the dollars into the biennial budget. We're now allocating those dollars across the county's budget. Sheriff's Department is a big one, as one example, right? Am I saying that right? Okay. Those dollars will then, at the end, create surpluses on the back end, okay? So we're going to the savings account now, letting ARPA just kind of do its thing, run its course, so that we can do this program without federal strings. And we'll see what surpluses look like on the back end and deal with them accordingly. In the end, I prefaced all of this by the last conversation. I feel like we're in really good shape. I even ran it up the pole with these two and said, if I'm crazy, tell me. They told me I'm not crazy. So, yeah, no. That's all, Your Honor. It's been minutes. No, so we had a good discussion about making sure that the way that the money flow was going to flow, this would work. But we will still have to follow all of the county processes and procedures for any bidding and all those things. But it takes away all the kind of federal headaches, which a lot of municipalities and counties are facing on a number of different areas. So think of CDBG and all the federal jazz we had to work our way through with this project. We're going to be able to avoid all of that by doing it this way. Even though we have to go to the county board and ask for a 2/3 vote.
Now that we have discussed it, I'll look for a motion in a second. Supervisor Schultes.
To approve them.
Supervisor Foster.
That's right, I made that error already too.
Are you ready for questions?
Yes.
One question I have on this, and this comes under the discussion point. Excuse me. The initial general fund transfer will be eventually recouped during the 2022 year-end close and will not impact the county's current financial standing. What's the plan to recoup the 7.5 million? Or what's the thought process?
So when I said the ARPA dollars will be implemented into the budget, which will create surpluses at the end of the year, it'll create revenue surpluses at the end of the year. That's two different ways of saying the same thing.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yep.
I just wanted some clarification. Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
This takes it to the board for 2/3 vote, is that correct?
Yes.
It is a 2/3 vote because it's a general fund transfer. The only thing I'll say to end with, and please remind me if I don't say this to the county board next month, 7.5 million for this program is just the start.
Yeah.
We'd like to double it, which is part of the thought process with the next 13.2 million. We'd like to be able to get to a point where the pilots have worked. We can demonstrate that they worked, and we can go to other municipal partners and do it again. Whether that's ARPA money or whether it's general fund money is, who knows, whether the private sector steps in as well. But just so you're aware, we don't want this to be the end. We'd like it to be the start. And I do anticipate it'll be a temporary program, but that temporariness might be a decade.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Our next item is the amending Article 3 having to do with election money.
Yes. I can answer any questions you have. I have it pretty much spelled out in the committee report, and then everything that's being changed in the ordinance is listed as well.
You probably remember that our previous board made a resolution supporting our legislature doing it, but that eventually was vetoed by our governor. So we're just coming back to make it firm in our
county.
laws.
Yeah.
So
Yep, so in 2020, we were offered the grant. We did not accept it or apply for it in 2020 prior to the April election. So
were we offered by the same people?
I think so. It came through, I mean, I don't know if we necessarily knew that it was Mark Zuckerberg and the Facebook Foundation, whatever it was. It came through under a different name. We were offered it, but felt that we did not need to apply for such a grant. We were well funded for elections and didn't need additional funding.
Okay.
Smart moves.
And I think you need a motion, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'll make the motion.
Motion by Supervisor Bossert, second by Supervisor Schultes. Any other discussion?
Just real quickly, are there a lot of other counties in the state that are moving forward with something like this, resolution
I
like this?
believe there's been a handful, but yeah, Walworth was the first, and then I think there's a few others that have been in the process of moving
Okay.
forward with this as well.
Thank you.
And 3 stages, I think.
Yeah,
You had a question?
No, I just wanted to make the motion.
Okay, oh, thanks. All right. With no further discussion, all in favor?
Question?
Oh,
Is this something that, I know in like resolutions, occasionally you'll share it on to different counties or share it on to the legislature? Is this something that could be shared on to municipalities and other counties and encourage them to do the same?
yeah, so I could forward this on probably after it passes at the county board level to all of the county clerks and ask that they share it with their county boards. Whether or not they do so, it's, would be up to them. And then
Can you remind me, do we do that in ordinances or is that just
it's
resolution?
usually just resolutions, but I mean, we can share it as informational with them. So,
I would encourage the committee and the board to do that. I think this is newsworthy, number one, and I think having our municipalities adopt it, because, they're really the ones that could easily be influenced. They're doing it on election day, and was it Green Bay?
it was
That was
Green
the
Bay
big
and
one.
I believe Milwaukee.
Yeah, so it'd be
Milwaukee,
nice to
that's
see
it.
There's a
City of West
handful.
Bend and Germantown, Village of Germantown.
Yeah.
And there's a statewide organization, Ron Hoyer, if I say that name, Wisconsin. I can get you the information. They're, what?
Is it Wisconsin right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are several different counties. I can get that where they're working on the entire state for just these kinds of things.
Oh, sure.
So,
Yeah, so maybe a motion at the county board level, could that be included at the county board level?
That's a great idea.
Sure.
okay. There being no further discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Our next meeting is July 20th at 4 PM. This meeting's adjourned.
What are you setting me up for the July 4th?
Yes.
You'll have fun.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
Are you on that? Is he
He's
out
not
of
gonna be
town?
here.
Okay. Hey, by the way, Jeff, can I get a couple minutes of your time?
Yeah, be ready in case he has a heart attack.
Oh, geez. Stay in good health. Good, good.
I'm not gonna put you on that. Because the kids come up. So if anybody's on
Oh, okay.
Now
That
what?
makes sense. I just
They
got the
started
email.
a new steering committee for UW Extension.